Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss the 2024 film Nosferatu, starring Bill Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Emma Corrin, Ralph Ineson, Simon McBurney, and Willem Dafoe, directed by Robert Eggers. Finally, I get to this show. Sorry about how late I am, and I'm also sorry. Well, I'll explain that in a minute. But before I get there, I have seen this movie 3 times. First 2 times were in the digital projection, and the third time I went to a theater, I won't say where I saw a 35 millimeter print of this movie. And before the movie ever came out, I got this popcorn thing that I should probably show you, the kind that Regal has, where it's pretty cool actually. You put the popcorn in here, and there's mice underneath. If you can't tell, it's mice. See all the dark stuff right there? Yeah, those are rats. And hang on, put this on the side, and yeah, that's a cool popcorn bucket. And I actually, and I heard they ran out of it too, so it could make sense. So, what do I think of the movie? Before I get into it, let's get into it, and we'll see. We start off with a young Ellen longing for love, and prays to any spirit to grant her companionship as she pleads, as answered by a terrifying beastly vision that causes her to collapse in a violent seizure. And this opening sets up something fucking terrifying. And remember, the trailer doesn't show you what this vampire looks like, as the score works for this movie's scariness for this entire movie. Years later, in the year 1838, and as it's Christmas time, and Ellen, as an adult, played by Lily Rose Depp, aka daughter of Johnny Depp, who lives in Weisborg, Germany, with her husband Thomas Hutter, played by Nicholas Hoult, as he's a real estate agent, as they're completely in love with each other. And I really like their chemistry while their cat showed on my first viewing, I thought, I swear to God, if they kill that cat, I'll be pissed and give this a negative rating. But spoiler alert, the cat nor any cats later in the movie won't die in this movie, as that made me happy by the end of the day. And his boss, Knock, played by Simon McBurney, makes Thomas go to the castle of Count Orlok, played later on by Bill Skarsgård, so he can sell his castle, as he won't see him until later in the film. And thank God I was spoiler free, so I didn't get to a glimpse of what Count Orlok looked like until I saw it on my first viewing the day after Christmas. We should spoil that part right now, as that made me very happy. And director Robert Eggers does a great job at keeping the audience in suspense. Welcome back, by the way, to Robert Eggers after I reviewed his filmography with the Northman. But for keeping the audience in suspense for what Count Orlok looked like until you get there later in the movie. Thomas tells Ellen in the 6-week about the 6-week trip, she gets upset over it, as we learn she saw a doctor about her past, and explains how everyone was dead because of her in the past, and she's afraid it'll happen again, as they go to a house party to ask of their friends Frederick Harding, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson after that god-awful Craven the Hunter movie, his wife Anna, played by Emma Corrin from Deadpool and Wolverine earlier this past year, and their 2 daughters, who are afraid there's a monster that will attack them in their bedroom, and they expect a 3rd child on the way, and it might be Frederick Jr., as Ellen cuts her hair, and we see Knock bare ass naked without seeing a wiener whatsoever. Yes, I'm going there, as he'll be too happy for the return of Count Orlok. And next day comes, and Thomas goes on his business trip and leaves Ellen with Frederick and Anna, as he leaves and gets to an inn where some gypsies dance around Thomas and says he needs a place to rest for the night, and explains he's going to the castle of Count Orlok, and people say he shouldn't. And the cinematography was breathtaking, as this movie is well shot and absolutely well made. They give Thomas a room for one night, which is all he wishes, while nighttime comes and he sees some of the gypsies, as one rides a horse rather naked to kill off Count Orlok. And what I admire about director Robert Eggers is he films disturbing scenes quite well. And as he wakes up, and thank God it was just a fucking nightmare, as he wakes up and sees his horse is missing, and he travels to the castle by foot and walks there for the whole goddamn day. As we as we get back to nighttime, and a carriage takes Thomas to the castle of Count Orlok, and he arrives, and we can barely see him in the trailers. And the trailers did a great job of not spoiling too much about what he looks like, while his three dogs watch Thomas get to the castle and sees Count Orlok. And when I saw this the second time, this movie completely took my breath away, while Count Orlok's voice is fucking menacing. Like, he sounds much scarier than he was as Pennywise from the 2017 version of It, despite that movie isn't as good as that film, in my opinion, and we can barely see his face until much later in the film. Count Orlok gives Thomas a drink as they sign some papers, and Thomas asks questions about what the gypsies did the night before, and Count Orlok orders Thomas to eat and cut a piece of food, or it was bread, I think, while Count Orlok asks if he's married and accidentally cuts his own damn thumb like he did in the original movie. And I admire how terrified Nicholas Hoult looked throughout the scenes in this movie, as it made me respect him as an actor, as he pulls off very amazingly. While next day is here, and Ellen and Anna take a walk outside the beach, while Thomas wakes up and looks for Count Orlok as he gets buried in his casket, like the popcorn bucket I have with me, this thing. Thomas remembers signing his work as well as some papers to make Ellen Count Orlok's husband, and makes her become a fucking vampire, in which he didn't realize it at night until he learns he took Thomas's locket, as he gets well paid. And I was scared when Count Orlok was on screen, as he was frightening throughout the movie. Thomas goes outside and finds Count Orlok in the casket, I showed you guys a few moments ago, as he awakens his dogs, and as they follow Thomas in behind, and tells Ellen her husband is lost to her, as we get haunting images of Count Orlok on top of her. Well, it was actually on top of Thomas, which it took me my third viewing to realize that. And I'm thinking of a question to myself. Is Count Orlok humping Thomas while he's feeding and keeping Thomas trapped in the castle, getting some bad rest? And we move on to Dr. Wilhelm Sievers, played by Ralph Ineson, coming in to see Ellen as he hears her moaning and puts her to sleep. And something about Lily Rose Depp's eyes were just, they seemed a little off, honestly. While Thomas is attacked by Count Orlok's dogs and jumps out of the castle, which is scaring the hell out of me, as that was an interesting choice by director Robert Eggers, as he makes interesting but frightening choices throughout the movie. Ellen chats with Frederick and Anna about how much she hates Knock and acting melodramatic, while Frederick hates the subject, as Ellen has another meltdown in broad daylight, while Dr. Sievers visits Knock as he bites off a bird's head, which is a very fucking disturbing scene, in my opinion, while Knock says to him in a guard, Count Orlok is coming, as he'll put a curse on the whole town, and when he bites the bird's head off, that feels typical Robert Eggers, but at the same time, I thought, what the fuck? As again, it's so motherfucking disturbing. As Dr. Sievers goes to Frederick and explains Thomas's employer is taken to a chamber, while Frederick asks, where in the devil are you, Thomas? And next thing you know, Thomas was found by the river and gets picked up by kind people, while Frederick explains his teacher and friend Professor Albin Ebenhardt von Franz, played by Willem Dafoe, as he was laughed at while working at a university he went to school at, as Thomas wants to come back to Ellen. And what I found hilarious in a strange way was Willem Dafoe played Max Schreck, aka the original actor who played Count Orlok in the 1922 Nosferartu, in that movie, in the movie Shuttle the Vampire, which I will review next time. Count Orlok travels by ship to Germany, while Dr. Sievers takes Frederick to Professor von Franz, as he has a lot of cats, and asks for Professor von Franz's help. And they go to the house, and Professor von Franz visits Ellen while her cat is on the bed with her, and she explains how the whole thing happened from the beginning, and takes her time as she explains it from childhood to happening in this movie. And the dialogue in this script is reminding me what some minor differences of the previous Nosferatu films, as this is the best one in my opinion. While I respect Max Schreck's take on the role, despite I didn't like that film too much, sadly, And nighttime comes and performs something evil as he believes she's cursed with a demon of some kind. And this scene is frightening for damn sure. Meanwhile, on the ship, Count Orlok is taking crewmates out who's trying to destroy Count Orlok by killing him, but he awakens after a crewmate sees a shit ton of rats in his casket. While Nock feels Count Orlok's presence and bites a guard's neck and escapes from captivity as Ellen hears Thomas arriving home by horse and rests with Ellen in the Harding house as the door is knocked and Frederick answers it and sees an empty ship is broken on land while Nock reunites with his master Count Orlok. And the costume designing as well as the makeup on Bill Skarsgård is spectacular. Ellen talks with Anna about it if Professor von Franz is wrong about what happened to her, as has a lot of great costume designing in my opinion. Count Orlok puts a curse on the town while Anna puts her two daughters to sleep, and Ellen scared the shit out of Anna and asks her to stay with her while Frederick goes to Seaver on Professor von Franz and is explained about Count Orlok as they calls it Nosferartu. As Ellen wakes up, and that scene, to tell you the truth, I didn't get what was funny about it, but Willem Dafoe said something that was kind of funny, that in a strange way, not in a ha-ha way like the audience laughed at. As Ellen wakes up and sees Count Orlok as he appears out of the blue, and he has a talk with him, and she doesn't believe a damn word he says. She does, anyways, and the mustache made the look on Count Orlok look a little silly, as that should have been gone while filming this movie, in my opinion. Ellen wakes up and sees Anna being tortured by something demonic while Dr. Seaver is being backed up at the mental hospital, while Anna is being comforted by Frederick, while there's times she can't breathe as Ellen wants to tell Frederick about this demonic thing, while he ends up kicking Ellen and Thomas out of their house, as she asks him why does he hate her and says out loud everyone is going to die, which felt a little dumb. While Dr. Seaver and Professor von Franz look for traces of Nock and Count Orlok, aka Nosferatu, while Ellen walks Thomas home while he's not doing so well, as Dr. Seaver and Professor von Franz come to by the Harding house, while Frederick acts all hysterical and shit. He kicks them both out and decides to leave town the next day, as Thomas wants to leave town also, and because of Count Orlok, she confesses he was her demon when she was younger, and has a monologue where she cries, and at the end of the scene she becomes demonic, which scared the hell out of me. And this movie makes some haunting but great choices to scare the hell out of the audience viewing this movie. Ellen acts like a goddamn demon, as I almost thought she was going to suck his dick. But they end up having some weird intercourse until it stops, and she calms down and says he'll never let her go, as Professor von Franz has the book and discovers Ellen is the one, while Frederick, like an idiot, stays asleep. Well, yeah, anyways. While Anna sees her kids getting killed by Count Orlok, and she gets killed as well, which almost made me dump in my underpanties in my second viewing. While at their funeral, Frederick is sad and pissed about it, while Dr. Seaver and Professor von Franz are there as Frederick almost attacks Ellen, and he believes everything what he saw thanks to Thomas, and it makes perfect sense as Ellen talks with Professor von Franz about how she knows she has to do what makes sense for the original movie's 1922 movie's purposes. Ellen stays inside the house as Thomas doesn't know a damn thing about how Count Orlok wants Ellen's blood, and they go after Count Orlok as they go in a funeral home where Frederick finds the caskets of Anna and their two daughters and unborn baby boy, and he kisses Anna's dead corpse, and gets killed by it as they break into a tomb and find Nock in the casket in a room filled with rats. As Professor von Franz kills Nock dead, and Thomas learns Count Orlok is after Ellen as he runs to her, Thomas I mean, and Dr. Seaver goes with him, and Professor von Franz burns the whole place down, while Count Orlok comes to Ellen as she predicts his presence, and she starts sucking on her naked body blood until Morning comes and gets fried up by sunlight, and Thomas, Dr. Seaver, and Professor von Franz get there rather too late as Ellen dies from getting the blood sucked out of her, and Thomas cries over it, which is sad. But the climax made me think this may be the best Robert Eggers movie. But did he have the vision of the 1922 movie? Let's get to the rating and find out, shall we? I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. The movie is fucking terrifying, and I was glad I didn't get spoiled for what Bill Skarsgård looked like as Count Orlok until I saw the movie for the first time, as he was much more horrifying than Pennywise from the 2017 film It, which I reviewed before. Despite this isn't as good as that film in my opinion, as he could be scarier without the mustache, but his voice is super menacing, and the acting is well done, and I bought Nicholas Hoult as afraid for most of the movie, and I respect him as an actor for pulling the fear off tremendously. And the cinematography is breathtaking in as this movie is well shot and absolutely well made, in my opinion. I was scared when Count Orlok was on screen, as he was frightening throughout, and kudos to Bill Skarsgård for making a scarier Count Orlok in this compared to, like I said, Pennywise in the 2017 It film, as director Robert Eggers does some interesting but frightening choices throughout the movie, as this is my favorite take on the story, despite I respect Max Schreck's take on it from the 1922 movie. I was super glad no cats nor dogs were harmed throughout the movie, but a bird's head was bitten off, as that wasn't a trigger for me, as the makeup on Bill Skarsgård is tremendous and the costume designing is spectacular, and this is a solid recommendation, as director Robert Eggers does a fantastic job with his vision of the old 1922 movie, as this movie scared the hell out of me. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me for this Dracula / Nosferatu retrospective, and until we get to another movie, I am Nosferatu and I will suck your blood.